Hello, listeners. If you can hear and see this, it means you're breathing and you're alive. Well done. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, let's begin. It started with a rumor, the kind that spreads through a small town like a slow fever, passed from older kids to younger ones in hushed tones on the playground, or during long, dull bus rides home. They called it the hiding game, and the rules were deceptively simple. You had to go into the Blackwood Preserve after official sunset, the deep woods where the streetlights gave up and the old hiking trails vanished into thick undergrowth. You had to go alone, and you had to hide, really hide, not just stand behind a tree. The goal was to stay hidden until sunrise. If you did, you won. Nobody could say what you won exactly, but the implication was that you would prove something to yourself, to the woods, to whatever listened in the dark. The warning was always the same: don't let it catch you, don't let it see you, it doesn't like to be seen. We treated it like a ghost story, a local legend to scare each other with. I remember sitting in Lou's basement, the three of us, Leo, Marcus, and me, bathed in the blue light of a muted television, arguing about it. Marcus, ever the skeptic, said it was invented by parents to keep kids from vandalizing the old ranger station. Leo was quieter, more thoughtful. He had found something, an old community bulletin board post from decades ago, printed out on his dad's dot matrix printer. The paper was faded, the text full of odd gaps where the printer ribbon had worn thin. It was a frantic, rambling account from someone named who claimed to have played the game and won. But the description of winning was all wrong. It talked about a silence that followed you home, a feeling of being walked behind. The post ended abruptly, mid-sentence. That fragment hooked Leo. He became obsessed. He started collecting every mention, every vague reference, in old yearbooks, on microfiche at the library. He found a pattern. Every 7 or 8 years, a kid from our town, or the next one over, would vanish, always near Blackwood, always at night. The official reports said runaways or accidents, but Leo connected the dots on a map in his bedroom. The dates formed a rough, terrible cycle. He believed the game was real, not a game at all, but a ritual, a feeding ground. Marcus thought Leo was losing it. I was caught in the middle, fascinated but terrified. The tipping point came when Leo's older brother, a college dropout named Carson, heard us talking about it. Carson was the kind of guy who needed to prove he was fearless, a hollow bravery fueled by cheap beer and insecurity. He mocked Leo's research, called us all chicken. He said he would play the game that very night and bring back proof, a picture on his crappy phone, something. We tried to talk him out of it, Leo especially, his face pale with a genuine fear I had never seen in him before. Carson just laughed, a mean, sharp sound. He left his house just after 10. The sky a deep velvet blue bleeding into black. We waited in Leo's room, the silence between us thick and heavy. Minutes ticked by, then hours. Around 2 in the morning, Carson's phone, which he had left charging on his dresser, buzzed once, a single notification. Leo snatched it up. It was a photo, sent to his own cloud storage. The image was dark, grainy, clearly taken without a flash. It showed a patch of forest floor, ferns, and rotten leaves, and in the corner, just at the edge of the frame, was a leg. It was wrong. The proportions were off, too long and thin, the knee joint seeming to bend the opposite way a human knee should. The skin looked slick and pale in the moonlight, not like skin at all, more like the membrane of a mushroom. There was no body attached, just that single, terrible leg, standing amidst the ferns, as if its owner was just out of shot. 10 minutes later, the back door slammed open. We heard heavy, stumbling footsteps, and Carson collapsed in the kitchen. He was drenched in cold sweat, his clothes torn by thorns. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered, but he wasn't crying. He was utterly silent, his eyes wide and fixed on something far away. He wouldn't speak, not then, not for days afterward. When he finally did, the story was broken, disjointed. He had hidden in a creek bed. curled up between the roots of a fallen tree. He said he heard it moving, not walking, but moving, a dry, rustling sound like many sticks being dragged over rock. He said it didn't search like a person. It seemed to be everywhere at once, in front of him, behind him, to the sides. He peeked. Just once, he saw it, or part of it. A shape made of angles that didn't make sense. All legs, too many legs, moving in a way that hurt his head to remember. He ran. He didn't remember running, but he must have, because he fell, tearing through a thicket, and found himself on the old fire road. And then the feeling stopped. The pursuit just ended, as if a line had been crossed. He took the picture just before he ran. A stupid, reckless move to prove he wasn't scared. The sight in that photo broke something in him. He dropped out of community college, moved away a few months later, and never spoke of it again. Leo took his brother's breakdown as grim validation. Marcus was forced to concede something was out there, but he argued it was just an animal, a sick deer or a bear with mange, something explainable. I knew it wasn't. The fear in Carson's eyes was for something outside of nature. That should have been the end of it, a lesson learned at someone else's expense. But it wasn't, because Leo, in his quiet, determined way, decided we had to end it. He theorized the game had rules, like a circuit. It needed to be completed or broken. He believed if someone could win, truly win, and stay hidden until dawn, the cycle might stop. The thing would leave, or starve, or find another place to be. It was a foolish, noble, terrifying plan. And he volunteered himself. Marcus refused, called it suicide. I refused too. But my refusal was weaker. Leo was my best friend. I couldn't let him go alone. A part of me, a deep, ashamed part, also needed to know, to see for myself. So on a cold autumn night, with a bone-dry wind whispering through the dead leaves, we went into Blackwood together. We had a plan. We would find a hiding place together, a deep, secure spot, and stay silent and still until first light. We brought no lights, no phones, nothing that could make a sound or a glow. We wore dark clothes and rubbed dirt on our faces. We felt ridiculous and deadly serious all at once. The woods at night are a different country. The familiar paths become slender threads in a vast, breathing darkness. Every sound is amplified. The crunch of a twig underfoot echoes like a gunshot. The scuttle of some small creature in the leaves is a monstrous approach. We walked for what felt like miles, deep into the preserve's heart, until we found a place Leo had scouted during the day. A massive granite outcrop split down the middle, creating a narrow, deep crevice just wide enough for two people to squeeze into. It was cold and damp inside, smelling of moss and wet stone. We settled in, our backs against the cold rock, facing the slim slit of the outside world. For a long time, nothing happened, just the wind and the distant call of an owl. The tension was a physical thing. A wire pulled tight in my chest. I watched the slice of sky through the crevice ceiling turn from deep black to a slightly softer charcoal. The stars icy and distant. I began to think maybe Marcus was right. Maybe it was just a story. Maybe Carson had a psychotic break. Then the woods went quiet. Not just the absence of sound, but a vacuum. The wind died. The insects ceased their humming. The owls stopped. It was a silence so complete it pressed against my eardrums. Leo stiffened beside me, his hand finding my arm in the dark. His grip was iron. That's when we heard the first rustle. It was dry, papery, like a bundle of reeds being shaken. It came from our left. Then, impossibly fast, from our right. Then directly in front of the crevice opening. It wasn't footsteps. It was a placement, a careful, considered setting down of something long and hard. I stopped breathing. Leo's hand was trembling. I could see a slice of the outside world through the opening, the ferns, the base of a pine tree. Then a shadow fell across it, not the shadow of a man or an animal, but a long, spindly darkness that seemed to fracture the moonlight. It moved, and I saw it, a leg, exactly like in the photo but worse in person. It was taller than I expected. The knee a sharp, backward pointing knob. The lower part slender and ending in something that wasn't a foot. More a tapered point, like a thorn. It was a color that had no business on a living thing, a pallid, grayish white, that seemed to drink the light. It stood there, perfectly still. For an eternity, I could see the texture of it, like polished fungus, veined with thin, dark lines. It did not search, it did not sniff the air. It simply was present, and I understood with a cold, sinking certainty that it knew we were here. It was deciding. The rustling started again, a frantic, skittering sound all around the rock, and I realized it wasn't one thing with many legs. The legs were the thing. They moved independently, surrounding our hiding place, tapping lightly on the granite above us. A dry, clicking noise. Leo was pulling me deeper into the crevice, but there was no deeper. We were trapped. The clicking grew more insistent, a pattern, not random, a kind of testing, probing. I closed my eyes, praying for it to move on, for the dawn to come. When I opened them, the leg in front of the opening was gone. The rustling stopped. The oppressive silence returned. I dared to hope. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, and Leo's grip loosened. That was our mistake, the relief, the unclenching. In that instant, a leg, thinner than the others, a probing, whip-like appendage, shot through the narrow opening. It wasn't reaching for us blindly. It moved with a horrible, precise intelligence, straight for Leo's face. He jerked back, but the rock trapped him, the tapered end. That thorn-like point brushed against his cheek, not a cut, just a touch, cold and dry as bone. Leo made a sound, a choked, guttural gasp, and the leg retracted as fast as it came. The rustling erupted into a frenzy, a chaotic symphony of dry clicks and scrapes that faded rapidly, moving away through the trees until the normal night sounds, the wind, the insects, slowly trickled back. We didn't move until the gray light of true dawn filtered down, turning the world from black to grim gray. We stumbled out of the crevice, our bodies stiff and frozen. Leo's face was unharmed, no mark, but his eyes were vacant, distant. The walk back was a blur, a nightmare in reverse. We didn't speak, we just walked, and when we finally reached the tree line and saw the rooftops of the town below, we stopped. Leo looked at me, and he said, his voice a rough whisper, "It knows my smell now. It tasted me. It will come for the rest." He wasn't scared, he was resigned. A fisherman who had hooked a leviathan and knew it was only a matter of time before it pulled him under. That was the beginning of the end for Leo. He changed. He stopped coming to school. He covered the windows of his room with aluminum foil. He drew strange, angular patterns on his walls, maps of the woods with no clear landmarks, just converging lines. He said he was trying to understand its paths, its patterns. He stopped talking about breaking the cycle. He started talking about completing it properly, about winning on his own terms. Marcus and I tried to intervene, but we were just kids. His parents were worried, but thought it was grief over his brother leaving, or drugs. They didn't know about the leg in the photo, about the crevice. I knew. I had seen it too, but my fear had turned inward. I had nightmares of that dry touch. I jumped at every creak in my house. I stopped going into my own backyard at dusk. Leo's final note was left on his bed. A single sheet of paper with a short, neat message. It reads, "The game is only for one player. I have to go back. I have to hide better. Don't follow me. If I win, it stops. If I don't look for me. And don't ever play the game." He was gone. His window opened to the cold night, a straight drop to the lawn below. We called the police. A search party combed Blackwood for days. They found nothing, not a scrap of clothing, not a footprint. Marcus fell apart, consumed by guilt for not believing, for not stopping him. I fell into a numb, functional haze. I finished school. I moved away for a few years. I tried to build a life. But Blackwood was always there, in the back of my mind, a dark stain on the map of my past. I moved back eventually. Family reasons. The town was the same, just older. The legend of the hiding game had faded. A new generation had their own ghost stories. But I saw the legacy, in the parents who wouldn't let their kids camp in their own backyards, in the way the preserve was officially closed at sunset now, with a new, sturdy fence and motion sensor lights that always seemed to be triggering for no reason. I thought maybe it was over, maybe Leo had won, or maybe the thing had moved on. I was wrong. Last night, I was driving home late from work, my headlights cutting through a thick ground fog. My route takes me along the ridge road that overlooks Blackwood. I never look into the trees, I keep my eyes on the yellow line. But the fog was strange, pooling in the valleys, and as I passed the old overlook, a break in the fog revealed a clear slice of the forest below. Bathed in bright, full moonlight, and I saw it, not a glimpse, not a shadow, but a full, clear view. It was in a clearing, standing perfectly still. It was a configuration of those same pale, spindly legs, but not in the shape of anything living. It was a structure, a grotesque sculpture, 7 or 8 legs planted in a rough circle, with others interlocked in a complex, angular lattice above, like the framework of a terrible nest or a cage, and in the center of that cage, hanging loosely, was a dark shape, a form that might have been a person, limp and still. One of the legs, a longer, finer one, was slowly, almost tenderly, tracing a pattern on the hanging form's arm, the same pattern Leo had been drawing on his walls. I didn't stop. I couldn't. My foot slammed the accelerator, and I flew down the mountain, my heart hammering against my ribs. But I know what I saw. The game never ended. Leo didn't win. He became part of it, a permanent player in a permanent night. And the worst part, the thought that keeps me awake now as I write this in the dead hours before dawn, is that I think it saw me too. The car's headlights must have swept across that clearing, a brief flash in the dark, and in my memory, as I rewind that fragment of a second, I think one of those legs, the one not engaged in the pattern, twitched just slightly and pivoted, the thorn-like point aiming up, toward the road, toward me. Since then, things have been off. My house makes noises it never made before, a tapping on the window pane that isn't rain, a scuttling in the attic that is too rhythmic to be squirrels. Last night, I woke up freezing, and the back door, which I deadbolt every night, was standing open, just an inch, letting in a stream of cold air that smelled of damp earth and something else. Something dry and old, like fallen leaves crushed to powder. I know the rules. I know I didn't choose to play. But I think the game has a way of choosing its own players, especially those who look too long, who know too much. Leo's final warning echoes in my head. But it's too late for warnings. The game is no longer in the forest. It has followed me home. And tonight, as the sun dips below the horizon and the long shadows stretch across my yard, I am faced with a terrible choice. I can wait here, in this house that no longer feels like a shelter, or I can go out there, into the growing dark, and try to find a place to hide. A better place than Leo found, a place so perfect it can't be found. But I know, deep in a place beyond fear, that there is no such place, not anymore. The only thing left to do is to keep the lights on, to listen to the dry rustling that is getting closer, and to write this down, so someone knows, so someone understands that the hiding game is very real. And you must never, ever play, because once you start, you can't stop, and it never, ever ends.